we're going to change it up a little bit on our format. We're going to have an open debate among some leading industry peers about the factors that will define success in the downstream industry in 2017 and beyond, touching a little bit about on our earlier presentation. So the panel discussion will take place under the theme of adding value through marginal gains. So essentially, if a 1% approach will define success, where should you be looking for that 1% improvement? And most importantly, how do you make them? Many people say it's a challenge, and it is challenging during these times to find the improvements, but we will bring on stage 4 panelists who will share their information with you. So please let me welcome them on stage, and I'll tell you how the format is going to go. So again, if we can have Boris Van Thiel back on stage with us. Dr. Malcolm Cook, the Head of Business Development for Thyssen Group Industrial Solutions Middle East. Saleh Mohammed Al-Halki, the Executive Director and Business Support at Qatar Petroleum Company at Capco. And Dr. Richard Charlesworth, Managing Director of Chemicals at IHS Markit Middle East. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. So before we get started, I wanted to remind you also now you can pick up your phones and submit some questions using Slido. I do believe you've used this before, where you submit your questions. We may not get through all of them, but I'll get through and do our best to get through the most important or popular questions as it will do. So questions are already coming in. So let me start, let's take a question first, because I see some of them coming in. So from Rajan, how can a few dollars per ton lower production costs really improve the plant's competitiveness? So I'd like to hand that over to, Mr. Al-Halki, can we give that question to you from Capco?
Shall I step in there?
You want to take that question? Okay.
Yes. For global production, cost curves can be very flat. A good example is the olefins cost curve, and only a few dollars per ton improvement can move your cost position from 4th quartile into 3rd quartile. Just a few dollars because of that flat structure, and that's in a number of the global production cost curves.
Okay, great. Can everyone hear? Can everyone hear? Okay, great. I'd like to ask a question over to Mr. Al-Halki from Capco. I want to start with you. So we've seen a lot over the last couple of days regarding performance and optimization. How is Capco dealing with that challenge? How are you not only making tangible, taking steps, but what are the steps that you can tell
Micro.
Kim.
I'm from my background was from the operation and
Sorry, you got the mics the wrong way around. So, can you switch on to Mr. Al-Halki, please?
Yeah.
We can get this mic to work.
Yeah.
How about that?
Okay, my background was in the operation, and presently I'm in the business support to the company. The plant is, the performance of the plant is function how you give attention to the plant. There is some change happening, but our core business is maximizing our production, improving the yield, carrying the performance of the plant from time to time, doing the benchmark. You have to identify also your operating strategy, operating philosophy. Sometimes when you build the plant in a certain capacity, in a certain steering factor, but the margin which you focus on it is how to maximize the plant up to the maximum production without compromising in the safety matter and environmental aspect. So the yield of the plant is important, and you have to keep always in touch with the plant, organizing your maintenance, turnaround. Invest in the plant. It's not you build the plant and you keep it. You have also to keep a continuous investment. Sometimes a small investment is making a difference. So like what he was saying, that the marginal is 1%, 2%. Sometimes this small improvement in the plant itself, it's coming with minimum investment, and it is available. So you have to tackle it, and you have to keep following up the plant, maximizing your production based on the feedstock availability, and organize your plant turnaround systematically. The plant is running, our plant is running now almost in 7-year cycle. When we start at the beginning, we have, we don't have enough knowledge, but with the time, the knowledge and the experience, are built, and you have to maintain it with your skilled people.
Can you give us a specific example of what Capco is doing?
We are reviewing our performance, doing the benchmarking, improve the reliability of the equipment, identifying the operational flexibility according to the market demand, but we never, compromise in the production itself,
So coming off your question, Dr. Richard Charlesworth, this question's for you. How do you analyze the work that Capco has done and compare it with the operational expenditure and commitments you're seeing in today's market?
Well, petrochemical markets are still growing. And we in IHS Market, you see a lot of those above GDP levels. And so there's market growth to be had. But with the volatile oil markets, uncertainty has for big investments, stubbornly high capex as well, issues of access to cheap feedstock, especially in this region, and access to finance. So that lends itself to what the likes of Capco and others are doing in this region to maximizing what they've got, looking at expanding the existing assets to capture some of that market growth. And Boris mentioned, we're all here to make a profit, to get some of that growth in the market globally.
I'm going to take a question. If somebody wants to comment on the panel, any comment?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on the panel. I think we just to pick up the points that you made, Salah, about looking at the marginal improvements. But I think you thought about these even, we take the last opportunity of your low-density polyethylene project. You looked at then, what can I do in this project that improves the whole asset of the site? And we used the example of the central control room. So that was a far-sighted improvement that you put in to improve the site overall. So it's taking those opportunities to develop that.
That's true. Sometimes you have individual investment for some particular thing you cannot do it. So, but when you have some bigger project or, major project about $500, $600, $700 million, you can cover some initiative within that project. But also you have to optimize. Sometimes you cannot get the best everywhere. You have to see at the end of the day what is your optimum cost for this investment.
Exactly. The investment has to make sense overall. And I think one of the things, again, we picked up the point we were discussing over lunch or earlier about the partnership that you form in terms of, for us, EPC contractor initially during the project, Capco is the customer. In this case, LyondellBasell is the licensor. So that's during the initial project, and then taking that on and developing it once the asset's on the ground, then looking for these marginal gains and marginal improvements.
Well, you have, with the ABC, you have to be clear from as soon as if the project is approved by the management, and if you have to move to the ABC phase, you have to be clear from the beginning by creating a common objective between the client and between the ABC contract or technology or vendors. And this KPI should be in place from day number one. Also, the ABC sometimes is insisting in one position, which he don't want to move to some sort of variation order, whatever they said. But if the scope of work are very clear from the beginning, then it will be easy to be handled. But the both, it is not only on the EBC contract, EBC itself, it's both of them. The owner also has to put his feet strongly by integrating also the operation team. Because at the end of the day, you have somebody to build and somebody to do the engineering and somebody to operate. So the owner, from the owner you have the project management, you have the operation. The operation has to be integrated from the early stage, because when the project are in a completion phase, then the project management is transferring this asset to the operation. So the easy way is to integrate the operation needs and the operating team from the early stage, so that the handover and the transfer and the startup will be done smoothly without, keeping both of the APC and the project management, because the project management, sometimes they do the project, and when they finish the project, they move to another project.
And I think this is, to pick up, leads us on from the point of view of from the classic EPC route and then into our asset management and asset development. We see it as a long-term partnership between ourselves, customers like Capco, and also licensors like LyondellBasell. So it's continuous improvement in grabbing these 1 or 2% marginal improvements.
Okay, we have 4 questions coming in. What opportunities do you see for improvement in your production assets? I think that's going to go to the Thyssen Group people. So either one of you gentlemen would like to answer those.
Yeah. Do you want
We'll get Malcolm to answer.
Sorry, could you just repeat that question?
So the question is, what opportunities do you see for improvement in your production assets?
Again, it's working with our customers, so it's not directly our production assets. It's working with our customers' production assets, and it's using the transfer of the knowledge, the experience we build up from working globally in asset management, and transferring best practice from one region to another region, and transferring best practice with the customer. So again, it's the partnership approach.
The partnership. So we're going to take another question that just came in. Again, apart from production costs, what other marginal gains can new technologies add to the market? I believe we just asked that question. Did we not? Okay, we'll do that again. Apart from production costs, what other marginal gains can new technologies add to the market?
Do you want me to
Yeah,
step
you
in?
take that, Richard. Yeah.
Well, certainly some of the newer technologies, the products such as polymers that are being produced, what we've seen from our market experts around the world, that some of the new technologies the products can command a premium above products that are produced in the older technologies, because of what we mentioned about the lower byproducts and the improved performance of that polymer resin, for example.
Great. We're going to go to the next question. What is the role that Thyssen Group performed in your most recent major capital project, and what was your experience during that project? We're going to give that one to Boris.
I mean, the most recent project we did here, or we are doing in the region, is a huge cement project. I guess you guys are not really interested in cement here. Mm-hmm. But there is another interesting project ongoing in Saudi Arabia, where we are doing exactly the motto of this conference here. This is a revamp of a fertilizer project in Saudi Arabia. And especially the target is in improvement of performance of the existing asset, increasing the capacity and going into a lower energy consumption scheme. And that's reflecting also our focus for the next months and the next couple of years here, focusing more in a service-oriented business here. Service means not only delivering spare parts for Thyssen Group, that's also a business for us, but I mean, service is beyond spare parts. Service means, as we mentioned, asset management. That is also all the brownfield activities. And I guess the majority of the projects coming now in the next couple of months and years are probably in the field of brownfield, and we are prepared for this. Yeah?
Great. We'll go on to our next question. How important are, according to your opinion, process improvements with regards to market competition? Who would like to answer that? Can we give that to Malcolm?
Yeah, I can take that question. So the question is, how important are process improvements to improving the market situation?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we heard during Boris's speech, we heard some examples of process improvements. We heard about the addition of sulfur to urea. We've talked about adding new grades of polymers, and we've talked about radical process improvements like the HPPO process. We've talked about our new technology for producing chlorine for oxygen depolarized cathodes, which really totally radically changes the cost curve. So it's fundamental to delivering this. So it's a series of the evolutionary big ticket changes which have been the feature of the Middle East over, I guess, the last decade or so. And now we see the sort of evolutionary process, the smaller gains, enable debottlenecking, energy efficiency, but without ever compromising reliability and safety of the assets.
Great. Questions are coming in. We'll go right to the next question. Is Ude still existing under Thyssen? We're going to give that to Boris now.
So once again,
Is Ude still existing under?
Ah, Ude.
Yeah.
I mean, the sound is very bad in this corner here. Sorry for this.
Yeah.
Ude, yes, of course, Ude is existing, and I mentioned a couple of times Ude in my presentation, not only referring to the long history we have with Ude since 1921, starting with the Ude fertilizer process, Ude ammonia process. Ude is still a brand in-house. Ude Star process for the propan dehydrogenation. You find this name still in our company, but we have decided to merge all the brands together into one company, which is Thyssen Krupp Industrial Solutions nowadays, and that enables us to use best practice of all of our brands we have in the One Solution engineering house. So you could imagine that we have a lot of engineering as well in our mining and cement divisions, and we're putting things now together and see how we can further improve in-house all aspects of engineering and procurement of plants. And that is a big benefit for you as our customer here. So Ude as brand is existing, yes.
Answer to your question. We're going to continue with you because we had one more question in there. They just moved this around on me. So let me give this question now to Richard. Richard, is the Middle East specific demand, or do you see the same in other regions? So is the Middle East a specific demand, or do you see the same in other regions?
Well, demand for the marginal gains, is that the question?
I'm assuming that's what it is, because that's our topic. Very, very correct here, considering your audience. But
Well, I mean, we've mentioned already, getting the most out of what you've got absolutely is all around the world. I mean, especially if for the higher cost, I'll go back to naphtha crackers in Europe and in Asia, getting that marginal gain is absolutely necessary. But in this region, there's obviously focus on the energy efficiency with gas prices rising, and also environmental issues. The great example is CAFAC in Qatar with their CO2 recovery, which recovers CO2 and then puts it back into feedstock to improve the production of their methanol plant. So yes, all around the world.
I mean, there is, if you allow me.
No, please.
There is, a shift, I would say, from the European or American sector to the Middle East. I think in Europe they're used to gaining the margins out of the processes because of the high feedstock prices in the past. So they have somehow to cope with all these things, optimizing the process to be competitive in the market, in the global market. Whereas in the Middle East, you had these subsidized feedstocks. So I mean, optimization of process was not really a topic in the last 10 or 15 years. So nowadays, every client is speaking with us about especially how to optimize the process and to get the most out of it. So, and they compare nowadays the ratio of 1 million BTU. I mean, comparing technologies, not only licenses, but also technologies and industries to get the most out of it. And that is really a paradigm shift in the Middle East, to my experience here over the last 18 months, I would say.
Okay, we're going to go on to business development. So this question is for both Dr. Malcolm Cook and also for Mr. Halke joining us from Capco. What does the current situation of the market mean for you as head of business development when you talk to clients here?
Well, when I talk to clients here, the fundamentals don't... Can you hear me with the sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, the fundamentals don't change. Business development is still based on person-to-person developing relationships and developing the understanding of the customer's needs. So that fundamental doesn't change for that. What does change, and Boris picked this point up earlier, is the needs from the customer are changing. Again, looking for the optimization, the marginal improvement, the development of that. So it's not shooting for the big ticket, always for the big ticket projects. I'm obviously interested to hear and see how ADNOC developed with their tripling of the petrochemical with the naphtha crackers over the next few years. So that's going to be an exciting phase for big ticket projects. But nevertheless, it's the development of the improvements of the marginal gains which matters to everybody, and how to really, I guess the expression when I was working in the European chemical industry in the early 90s was how to sweat the assets, so how to make the most from them. Yeah.
Absolutely, a very, very good sentiment. Can we give that question to you, Mr. Saleh from Capco?
Okay, in Capco, I mean, okay, we are operating with different technology. I mean, we have, in the polyethylene plant, we have almost 4 technology. Our strength is also to have a strong partnership with the licensor, with the technology provider, and we have established with them some sort of technical support agreement in which we have reviewing the performance of the plant every year, and also they are providing to us whenever there is improvement in the technology. Also, sometimes we did internal improvement within the plant, we share it with the licensor. Also, we have to, with the production is the production, but sometimes we have to deal with the customer in terms of the applications. We have our technical customer services. Generally, they deal with the customers. They identify, they educate the customer in different applications. And sometimes we deal directly with the customer to develop a specific requirement, which took times until you reach the satisfaction of the customers.
Interesting. Okay, another question. How are these demands reflected in ThyssenKrupp's organizational setup? Give that to Boris.
I mean, we have to build up our local organizations in the region and enable them more to provide services. Service is a very local business, and that means we have to be close to our customers. And that is where we are focusing at the moment to, let's say, establish and increase the number of boots on the ground in terms of business development, having people with a service mindset in the company. That is very important. It's a difference to sell a greenfield plant compared to a brownfield revamp project. So different, level of contacts on the client side. So we have to go more in the details to understand more the processes. And that is something where we are investing now in this moment to become more close to our customers, because the customer is the most important for us at the moment. And we have good examples in some areas. In some areas, there is room for further improvement, I guess.
Further improvement. I've been to many of these conferences, ADIPEC, Vienna's coming up next week. The name of the game seems to be doing more with less. The words challenge, the buzzwords of challenge and efficiency are, pretty nice words to talk about what currently is happening around the world. I'm doing more with less. But you still can't forget that your customer is your customer, and they want that face-to-face and attention. How do you do more with less when you're trying to do an organizational structure, hiring, putting people, and essentially having less staff, less people to deal with whoever the customer is who has not changed? Give that to Malcolm. In this region in particular, Malcolm.
Well, in this region in particular, I think what we've done, what we've seen is we've seen quite substantial reorganizations on the customer side. If you look across the national oil companies, we've seen a reduction of staff across the national oil companies, and a change of their focus. And for us, we see that as an opportunity, because for us, it helps us create this partnership. Whereas the national oil company may have done certain things themselves, they're looking then to outsource some of the things on the asset improvement. And that helps us develop an opportunity for that aspect. So we see that getting the organization right for the new challenges coming forward from the national oil companies and their affiliates is something that we're working very closely to make sure our organization is right to match that.
Great, thank you so much. Another question coming up. I think we've answered the first one. I would be interested in how does the panel see the current trends in the region, from Anonymous. How does the panel see the current trends in the region? So we'll start with you, Mr. Saleh, and we'll go down the line.
Okay.
Just in a nutshell, how does the panel see the current trends in the region?
Again, sorry?
How do you see the current trends in the region?
Well, I mean, each company has his own strategy, and they have their own strategy, and they have to work for it. I mean, but I mean, there is a strong competition, and each company has to focus on how they have to keep their performance and their customer and their supplier to their client.
Great, thank you. Malcolm?
Yeah, I think how do we see the trends in the region? I think there's been the trend in Richard, as one of the slides Richard had, was the change in the feedstock. So generally in within the GCC, there's not the same availability of gas. Certain countries Abu Dhabi as example is a shortage of gas and importing gas from Qatar. Qatar is putting a limit on further exploration of gas at the moment. Saudi Arabia is gas short in terms of developing, needing for the power, because the demand for power in the region is increasing substantially. So we see the change of feedstocks moving to heavier feedstocks. That's one of the things I see. And then we see, which doesn't change, is the impact of global competition. Yeah. Have I stolen your thunder there, Richard?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things...
You can pass.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
I'll add job creation. It was on the slide that Boris presented. The move to, obviously, utilize the local talent rather than expatriate talent, build up our own knowledge base, building our own marketing organizations without the use of off-takers, which has been a traditional model for a new build, to have an off-taker quite often to appease lenders and give the lenders a bit more confidence or lower their risk. But a good example in this region is Orpic with the Liwa Plastics project. They want to build their own marketing organization, and of course in Qatar the Muntajat organization, channeling all the chemicals through that and utilizing local talent rather than expatriates to generate jobs for locals. And that obviously has been mentioned a lot over the last 2 days.
Interesting. Boris?
I mean, I'm tempted to skip because almost everything is said already. But let me touch one point, that is the creation of jobs and diversification of the industry. I mean, that was not mentioned yet here on the panel. I see there's a trend of the economies, of the countries, of the producers to become more diversified and independent from the commodities. We see it really, that there is a move. And I think the way is going further downstream in the industry with further applications that offers also a complete new field of action for us as a technology-based EPC contractor. And I mean, the other trend is creating job. It's a people business now. I mean, it's becoming more cozy now. Be with the customers, that's also a trend, but a positive trend. I mean, what I've recognized over the last couple of months, because we're sitting together with our clients, or with collaboration partners. Sometimes they're competitors, sometimes they're partners, but we are sitting together and we see how we can do and develop things in these challenging times. And the message is, you are not alone. We are all sitting in the same boat.
Okay, great. We have another question in here, anonymous. Can you give us an estimate of how big the potential for gains are within your approach of marginal gains? I'm going to give that question to Richard. So,
wow.
Can you give an estimate of how big the potential for gains are within your approach of marginal gains?
Okay, well, there's a whole host of marginal gains, not just in the technology. The marginal gains in your production cost, which can be through obviously the utilization of raw materials, the utilities, maintenance costs, reliability, etc. So that's sort of a production area. Your actual product, which I've already mentioned, if you're providing products that with a better properties, you can get the premiums in the market. Environmental as well, I've already mentioned CAFAC. That was they've sequestered the CO2 not just as environmentally, but they're using it as feedstock. And then beyond sort of the production point, you've got the supply chain as well. There are a lot of newer platforms to improve that whole supply chain and to minimize demurrage and things like that. So it's, whilst technology is a huge part of it, your whole buy, make, sell, that we are in the chemical industry at all stages, there can be marginal gains along there, and which can, and we have seen within IHS, can turn a company that is struggling to profit.
Interesting. Another question that came up, what is the service you offer beside providing the technology to achieve the gain? I think we'll give that to both Thyssen Krupp and to Capco. So Malcolm, if you want to take that question, and then I have a follow-up question.
Yeah, sure, no problem. In terms of the service we provide, for our own technologies, we provide technology expertise, technology transfer, and I'll come back to the word technology transfer as well. So that's our own technology. We provide the innovation, the development, the continuous improvement of that. And I said I would come back to technology transfers. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is the strength and the depth of our technical resource. So that's transferring technologies from other people to customers, working with customers to improve technologies overall, be it whether it's our own processes or a third-party technology process. So it's really, for us, it's that technology base, that improvement that we're providing, ultimately always for the benefit of the customer.
What about beside technology? What other service?
Services we provide, Boris covered it in his presentation. It's really then looking at things like environmental studies, energy studies, process improvements, how to optimize efficiency on the plant. We get asked questions about manning, best practice, helping out with benchmarking studies of how our customers relate to others across the world in comparable industries, and sometimes in different industries.
So I have a follow-up question. How does this change the complexion of businesses like Thyssen Krupp in the Middle East in terms, like you talked about, the solutions that you bring to the market? So give us an example, one or two, of innovation that Thyssen Krupp is bringing to this market in particular.
Again, looking at I think we were talking earlier with Johan, it's the company's desire and transformation is to become less Germanic-centric and push everything more and more into the regions. So we're getting closer and closer to our client base. I've been in the GCC since 2008. I made my first visit here since 1996. My daughter was born here, so this is fundamentally my home, and I'm glad to see our company is bringing more and more people into the regions.
Absolutely. Okay, we have another, this is a good question, so I don't know who wants to take this. Richard, I'm going to save you because you're in the hot seat. You keep getting a lot of questions here. But so we saw the Solar Impulse presentation this morning, which showed you can fly a plane without jet fuel. How does the team view the future demand for petroleum? Was that scary watching that this morning?
I'll cover some of that, and then
okay.
we'll do.
Yeah. We can trade that.
I mean, for me, personally, I see hydrocarbons as always, or oil and gas as being a fundamental part of the energy mix. We do see an increase in renewables, and okay, I come from Scotland. Last year, Scotland, we were running on 100% renewables, and we were lucky the wind blows a lot in Scotland. But this region is blessed with very, very good solar. And we see great strides happening in the solar industry here. We also have technology. We didn't talk about it today because it's we can't cover everything in one forum. But we have technology for both hydrogen electrolysis and for redox batteries. So this is coupling either solar power or wind power and able to feed that energy back into the grid. So we're really excited by the change in solar power. And again, a change to solar power. But I do see fundamentally oil and gas still playing an important part in the region moving forward. I think one more thing to say, if you look at, we're in UAE at the moment, UAE looking at the diversification of the energy mix, adding solar, adding nuclear, with the Masdar initiative and where they're investing both here and investing globally in renewables. I see this region as the center for renewables globally.
Okay, Richard, I'm going to give you a different question because we're running out of time, but I want to make sure this gets answered. From Michelle, with China heading to self-sufficiency, what are the alternative markets for GCC chemical producers to target? You want to repeat that?
Well,
No?
their own domestic market may be small, but growing quickly.
Okay.
But India, the pace of development has been slow for new petrochemical complexes, albeit there's some new ones coming on at the moment. But certainly that is a relatively close and rapidly growing market. Fundamentally, we look at our forecast for petrochemical demands on a consumption per capita. And our forecasts are that consumption per capita is going to creep up. But when there's a lot of capita, and billions of people in India, that translates into a lot of millions of tons of polyethylene. And of course, the Middle East is very well served, very well placed rather, to serve that market in the future. So, but also there's the likes of Vietnam and Indonesia as well. So, and Africa. So, yes, China may well carry on becoming more self-sufficient, but the Middle East has plenty of markets to export to, as we see it.
Interesting. Mr. Shah, I have a question for you. Yesterday, the ORPEC CEO described the 4 Ps, so in the process of transformation, the third P being people. How have you addressed that need at Capco with the do more with less challenge?
Well, I mean, what he was saying that Mr. Masab from ORPEC, that they have 3 organizations and we did some study, and at the end of the day, I think they merged in one organization. I think they have some objective from the beginning, and they were happy in the result of that one. With us, we have some sort of synergy within our industrial area and where we are. But sometimes the product is different from one to other. We are in the petrochemical, the other in the fertilizer, the other in, so the product itself is not. But we are open, we are discussing a lot of synergy today. We create some sort of synergy within our side, link it to the other factory like the C3, C4, the sulfur. We have created some opportunity between us and QChem, between us and refinery, between us and, but for some small scale, But I think this is the future. In order to be more efficient, you have to be integrated.
So one of the buzzwords that I hear a lot here in the UAE in particular, in the MENA region, the sustainability. So we have a question from Anonymous. How does the sustainability challenge affect the future of the industry? And we can get that question to Forrest. Do you want to take that?
It's more Richard's field, isn't it?
Wow. After you.
So sustainability being the buzzword, how does that challenge the future of the industry?
That's a very good question.
You can use one pass.
No.
I think the environmental impact obviously is a license to operate. Most of the plants in the region are relatively new compared with some of the plants around the world. So they have more of the up-to-date regulated kit for keeping gaseous and aqueous emissions down. But it's fundamentally a license to operate from a point of view. But beyond that, I think I'll have to hand over to other people.
Well, I think I'm happy to help out. That's probably one aspect of sustainability, looking at environmental sustainability. And that's going to be continuous improvement on the energy performance, etc., and driving that down. Then there's the sustainability, as Richard said. We have, most of the time, we have a very young asset base here in the Middle East. And sustainability is making sure that that asset base still develops, still has the latest technology, but without spending big tickets on that. So that's the sustainability of the overall complexes as well.
Interesting. Okay, we got that. So, gentlemen, we're almost out of time. I want to thank you for your time and your information and answering the questions. It's not easy. I feel like we were on a little bit of a game show right now, just throwing out the questions. And thank you to our audience for your fantastic questions. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much.